I turned 17 about a week ago, meaning this story happened around 5 years ago on my 12th birthday. My birthday that year was on a Wednesday, but since I have a summer birthday, I don't have to worry about going to school or anything like that. A few days before my birthday, my grandparents and one of my aunts and 3 of my cousins went to a campground about 45 minutes to an hour away from the area all of us live. My grandparents invited my twin and me to stay in their cabin with them, while my aunt and cousin's cabin was a short walking distance away. We agreed. It's important to note my aunt is a single mother and has one source of income. She works at a school not far from where I live, and since she works summers, she offered to drive my twin and me home on our birthday so we could spend our day with our parents. Since my aunt had to be at work pretty early, my twin and I had to wake up around 6 a.m. The layout of my grandparents' cabin is crucial to the story. It was a one-room cabin, and when you walk in, my grandparents' beds were in the top left corner, while my bed and my twins' beds were in the top right corner. Before going to sleep, my grandmother lit a candle and left the door unlocked so my aunt could walk in without waking my grandparents. In the early hours of my birthday, I woke up suddenly for no apparent reason. Judging by the light through the windows, I thought it was about 5 a.m., if not earlier. I turned to look at my twin, whose bed was about 2 feet to the right of my bed. There was a man sitting on his bed, staring me dead in the eyes. I was still really groggy because I was in a deep sleep before I woke up. At first, I thought it was my twin, and he had gone outside to pee or something. Even groggy, I thought it was weird my twin would be in his boxers when sleeping in the same room as family. Then I noticed my twin still sleeping. Who was this man sitting on my twin's bed? My heart rate began picking up as I noticed my grandparents still sleeping across the room, so this man wasn't my grandfather. I froze for what felt like forever, until the man got up and left, didn't say a word. I guess what scares me the most was how, in the candlelight, the man's eyes were completely black. On the way home, I mentioned something to my twin about the man, and he said someone was inside the cabin, and my grandparents backed me up too. My grandmother thought the man was drunk and went into the wrong cabin by accident. There was a man camping alone a cabin or 2 away from us, who she thought it could have been. However, this doesn't make sense to me. The cabins weren't close together. They were at least 50 feet apart, not to mention my grandparents' vehicles, chairs, dog toys, etc. should have been a giveaway that this man was at the wrong place. If he went outside to pee, which I assume was why he wasn't wearing pants, only boxers, why would he completely walk away from his own cabin? If he wanted to go to the public bathrooms, they were in the complete opposite direction. Why wouldn't he have noticed he was sitting on someone? I've been drunk once, so I may be mistaken, but that doesn't sit right with me at all. This camping trip had another weird instance, but that was funny more than scary. My grandfather had a trailer for firewood or whatnot he had brought. Since the driveway for our cabin was small and his SUV and my grandmother's car were taking up most of the space, he put his trailer in my aunt's driveway. My twin, myself, and all of my cousins were in their driveway talking. Across the road was another cabin, and a little girl, maybe 5 or 6, was walking around stark naked and started doing weird dances underneath one of those outdoor faucet things while the water was running. It was funny as heck, but it got kinda weird when the little girl walked across the street, past my twin, my cousins, and me, and got in my grandfather's trailer and started putting rocks in the trailer. The kid's parents didn't even notice she had walked away. My oldest cousin is a quick thinker, thankfully, and ran for our grandmother as the rest of us stood there in shock and didn't know what to say. My grandmother told the kid's mom, who grabbed the girl and didn't apologize. This instance still comes up sometimes, and it always makes me laugh. My friend Lily has a cabin on a lake in Washington. One summer, she brought me and her cousin Evan. It had been a great couple of days, and on the last night, we went fishing at the lake, about a 5-minute walk from her cabin. It was about 7 p.m., and the fishing was perfect at that hour. To get to the beach, you had to walk through a small section of woods. There was a trail in the middle that, during the day, was occupied by women jogging with strollers and kids running to another nearby beach. Our beach was more secluded, and there was no trail to get there. The hill down was steep and slippery, and on the way back, it took climbing on all 4s to get to the top. We stayed at that beach until about 8:30, just sitting in the dark, relaxing. We were good kids and mostly just sat on a log chatting. It was one of those weird situations where suddenly you look around and you realize that it's gotten dark. I told Lily and Evan that we should probably get home. They agreed, and we packed up our gear. This was the latest that we had stayed out at the beach, so to my overactive and scary movie-powered imagination, I was a little scared. We calmly, and silently for some reason, walked up the hill. I told them that it was pretty creepy here at night, and then Evan made it 10 times worse. He told us a story about these mountain men who had been around in the 60s and were basically these men who lived in the woods and were in some sort of cult. He said that they had murdered people all over the area for their cult, and that some were still around. Internally, I was hysterical and terrified, but externally, I basically told Evan to shut up and to stop trying to scare us. As we started to cross the trail, Evan looked to our right for some reason. He stopped dead in his tracks and looked scared. Lily told him to stop being stupid, and the two of us started to climb the steepest part of the hill. Evan grabbed us both by the arm very forcefully and made us look where he was looking. At first, I couldn't see anything, and I just wanted to get home. But then my eyes adjusted, and I saw a large man stumbling toward us pretty slowly. Who knows what his intentions were, but being kids, we freaked out and scrambled up the hill as fast as we could. We all turned around at some point and saw that the dude was running toward us while we climbed. He got pretty close to us until we finally got over the hill and sprinted across the road to the cabin. It sounds fairly innocent, but we all had a deep feeling of dread when we saw him on that trail. I didn't feel like he had good intentions. Once we got to the cabin, we threw our gear on the porch and ran to the front door, and it was locked. There was a secret knock that her family had that showed that the person at the door was a member of the family or a friend. It was a fairly complicated rhythm, and both Lily and Evan banged on the door to the family knock. I just looked around trying to see if the creep had followed us, but saw nothing. We were let in and in a panic told the adults the whole story. They said it was probably just some guy who we probably made feel bad. We disagreed but felt safe in the locked cabin with grown-ups. The cabin had a walkout basement, basically like a lower story, not a creepy basement. It had a door and windows, where Lily and I slept on bunk beds. We went down to get into pajamas. After about 5 minutes of calming down together, we heard the family knock. I thought it was Evan trying to come in from the stairway door, so I said, "Come in." No response. It happened again, but this time we realized where it was coming from, the window outside. Lily and I turned completely white and stared at each other with that horrible feeling of terror in your stomach. It happened again, but a little more frantically. We both ran to the stairway door and booked it up to the living room where Lily's family, and Evan, were. We told them all what we had heard through panicked tears, and Evan went downstairs to listen. He said it was definitely the knock. While Lily's uncle, older brother, and older cousin all gathered flashlights to go look outside, we heard it again, but on the front door. Everyone looked at the door and huddled together. It happened once or twice more, and Lily's uncle finally decided to call the police. He said, "I'm not sure what their intentions are, but there is someone trying to get into my cabin." The knocking went on for another 2 minutes or so, and finally it stopped. 5 minutes after the call, the police showed up with a comforting loud pounding and "police" yell through the door. To make sure, Lily's uncle looked outside a window and saw other police searching around for the creeper. The police never found anyone, but those banging knocks on the door will stick with me forever. The policeman said that it was probably just some guy who was twisted and just wanted to freak some kids out. But what creeped me out the most was the fact that that person had memorized the complicated family knock. All three of us slept on the floor together. When I was about 7 years old, my father bought a few hundred acres in southern Mississippi, about 2 hours west of Mobile, Alabama. He built a small cabin on top of a hill that was in the middle of a large field surrounded by woods. This house was about 5 miles from a paved road. To get to our land, it took nearly 10 minutes of driving down dirt roads from the main highway, which was south of the house. About a quarter-mile north from the house, he built a small lake, more like a pond. It was about as long as a football field, but wider. To get to the lake from the house, you could take Route A, which was a hard-packed dirt road that was lined with dogwood trees. It was beautiful in the spring. Route B was about 100 yards east of Dogwood Lane, and we named it Vampire Trail because it was always so gloomy. The trees blocked out the sun on the brightest days, and it had a slight decline as you walked toward the lake. I say walked because this trail was not for vehicles. Thick woods filled the area outside and in between both trails. One morning during the fall, my parents and my little sister had gone to get ice cream and do some shopping. This trip would take them at least an hour or two. I was 10 years old, so I decided to go fishing while listening to Bama play Ole Miss. The game was the usual Bama win, so I thought I could ease the boredom of a blowout by fishing in the well-stocked lake. So I carried my pole, a small radio, and my small ice chest. I had an Airedale Terrier named Bully that never left my side, and it was on this day I realized how awesome he really was. Onto the lake we went. Picture a large oval, roughly the size of a football field but larger, with an L-shaped pier in the southeast corner. Vampire Lane opened up to a more severe decline to the shore, and then the small pier. Across the lake on the west side, there was a narrow tree line that separated the shore from Dogwood Lane. The north side of the lake was the dam, and the south ended in thick and swampy woods. Fortunately for me, I realized later. About 5 minutes after I threw out my line and 2 Bama touchdowns later, I got that feeling. It's a feeling I have come to recognize well, and it may have saved my life this day. The feeling of being watched by something dangerous. Bully must have felt it too, because a few seconds later I could hear him growling low and staring across the lake to the west, to the tree line that separated Dogwood Lane from the lake. I turned my head in that direction, and almost immediately my eyes lit on what I thought to be a half silhouette of a large man behind a tree. It was too far to make out details, but close enough to be sure of what I was seeing. Almost 5 minutes went by, and right before I scolded myself for an overactive imagination, the half silhouette moved behind a tree slowly. Bully stood and growled louder, and I told him quietly to stop, and I turned my head north towards the dam while keeping my eyes and attention rooted to that tree. Over the next 10 minutes, which felt like hours, I watched while this figure moved slowly from tree to tree, always north and always facing me. The saying "scared stiff" was something I found to be true. For some reason, I thought it's important that whoever or whatever it was did not know I was aware. I finally realized that the figure's path was bringing it closer to the dam, which would make its path to me shorter and easier. My paralysis broke, and I casually put down the fishing pole and started walking towards Vampire Lane. As an adult, I was in the Army for 11 years as an MP, but not turning to look over my shoulder during that walk was the hardest thing I have ever done. In my mind's eye, whatever it was screaming across the dam towards me. When I hit the tree line, I broke into a run. As I was running, Bully dashed ahead of me, and my anger turned into admiration as he stopped 20 yards ahead and faced north until I passed him. He continued this action the entire run home. My dog was watching my back, just epic. Although I can grasp the awesomeness of this now, at the time I was so scared that I was literally sick. Even at such a young age, I knew that a large man watching and trying to creep up on a 10-year-old boy was up to no good. When I reached the cabin, I immediately locked the door and got one of my dad's shotguns, as well as his .38 revolver. I sat at the large front window, my eyes glued to both trail openings and the woods between them. My family returned shortly after, and for some reason I did not mention what happened. I never felt safe there again. When me and my friends or my little sister wanted to go anywhere other than the area around the cabin, I made sure my parents were with us. What scares me the most, though, is the fact that our closest neighbors were about 2 miles northwest of us, with thick woods in between as the crow flies. Who or what the hell was watching me from the woods that day? Guess I may never know. I sometimes wish I could go back then, as a grown man with military training, as I am now. Bully lived a full life and was put to sleep peacefully as a very old but great dog. The best dog I have ever known,